Hey everyone, I've seen a lot of questions on the groups and the forums of how and where to start source products. It's a really big topic that gets complicated and convoluted, and there's a lot of advice out there. So I wanted to make a quick three series video to discuss where best to source products. This is part one: domestic or international. Finding your manufacturer, to go stateside or not to go stateside. That is the question. There's a lot of talk out there about Alibaba. Alibaba is a fantastic resource, and there are a lot of places, a lot of different countries on Alibaba other than China. But unfortunately, when people think of Alibaba, they automatically think of China. But there are a lot of benefits to going to a different country or staying at home in the United States or even Canada. But really, it depends on the product and the brand. What are you going for? Things like consumables, personal care, what people are going to be putting on their face, supplements, food. So whether it's, touching someone physically or they're ingesting it, you really want to be careful. I recommend sticking domestically. You're going to have a much easier time with customs and regulations, and there's a standard, more of a set standard and structure about how products are made and manufactured in the United States that prevents things from going awry. I would also be cautious about children and baby products. People are very sensitive with their children. If you're making a bag or some type of physical product like a toy, even toys, you want to be careful. You should be okay. A lot of companies go out and source their baby care products from Asia. However, you have to remember that they have teams and entire departments of sourcing engineers and product specialists who visit these manufacturers. And as a small business owner, you might not have the funds to go to China and check out the manufacturing facility and make sure that they have the proper certifications. Two quick examples from my experience. I was recently going to start an apparel brand, and it was really going to be an apparel accessory. And we started sourcing products in the United States. We wanted that to be a part of our brand, made in the USA. Well, it turns out that this specific accessory is only being manufactured in really 3 locations in the United States. And when we talked to one of those manufacturers, they had commented that one of their competitors were going to be closing down because they couldn't compete with the factories overseas. Another interesting piece is I'm getting into personal care, skincare, and I was talking with our manufacturer, and I had mentioned that I have other physical product businesses that we import from China. And she had mentioned to me that she had received a call from a potential customer, and that customer wanted to move their manufacturing from China to the United States or Canada because they had found sources of lead in their product. And when the manufacturer said, okay, well, absolutely, we'll help you out, here's our pricing, the person actually backed off and said, we'll stick with our plant in China, despite the fact that they're actually selling these products in Canadian boutiques. So how that got past customs is another story, but you definitely don't want to be messing with something like that. So you really need to weigh the pros and cons when thinking about international versus domestic. So here are some pros and cons. Domestically, pros, I would say the consumer base views products manufactured in the United States as more legitimate. And it kind of gives a special flavor to them because so many things are manufactured out of the United States. Product protection. This is something that I would definitely speak with a lawyer about. I am not an expert on it. However, usually if someone gets injured using your product or they sue you, you can point to the manufacturer because it could be a manufacturing defect. It could have been a result of the manufacturer. However, if you're getting your products from overseas and in China, you're not going to be able to point that finger to them. There's not going to be a lot of legal recourse that you have, and it's going to fall on you personally and your business. Working conditions and regulations. As global citizens, we always want to be aware of the conditions that we're having our manufacture, where our products are being made. And that's something to keep in mind. The standards are not as high overseas or in other parts of the world than in the United States. Another pro, Not many people are doing it. Everyone's being told, go to Alibaba, go to China. It's where all the goods are. It's where it's cheap. You're going to pay an arm and a leg if you stay in the United States. But that's a pro because you have that made in America stamp on it. Cons, not many people are doing it. So you're going to be a little bit of an innovator or blazing the trail, at least in the private label space or the subscription space, if you're finding all of your goods from the US. And there won't be as many places that you can go to find information. It might also feel more intimidating. I think for some reason when we deal with people in China and overseas, there's this smoke screen between us and them, where if something goes awry or if the communication doesn't work out well, we can just dump them and then get someone else. Whereas knowing we're interacting with someone in the United States, another American, it can be more intimidating talking to them. That doesn't mean you shouldn't, though. There's also less product selection. In my apparel example, there are products out there that aren't being manufactured in the United States. You have to go overseas. And yes, it's true. Most things you get manufactured in the United States will be more expensive. And that's just the nature of our standard of living and our working conditions and regulations. So that's definitely something. Abroad, pretty much the opposite. It's cheaper. It's an easier point of entry for people who are just starting out in the private label or subscription service. It's easier to find manufacturers. Alibaba has a very easy to use user interface, and there aren't that many robust websites for finding manufacturers domestically, but we'll talk about that in the next video. Cons. There's a language barrier. If you're going outside of this country, most of the time people are not going to be using English as a native language. So some of the things that you're communicating with them may be lost in translation, even if the person you're dealing with has a pretty high communication ability in English. Again, no product protection. The communication time. They are, I believe, around 10, 12 hours ahead of us. So if you're going to get work done and you want to get work done in a short amount of time, you're going to either be waking up really early in the morning or staying up really late at night. If you're dealing with someone on this side of the globe, whether that's the United States or South America, you'll at least have the same time zone, so you'll be able to jump on the phone throughout the day, throughout the business day. Working conditions and cons, shipping costs by air. If you're starting out and you're new to the business, you're really eager to get those products up and tested and into the marketplace, into the warehouse and selling. But shipping costs are very expensive, unless you want to do it by sea, which is a whole nother can of worms, something that I've done, and it usually takes between 6 to 8 weeks to get your products from overseas to the United States, and it might get held up in customs. You might have some issues getting it into the whatever fulfillment center you're using, so that's a con as well. If you're shipping from the US, Amazon actually has a partnership with UPS, so you can transfer goods to an Amazon warehouse at a discounted rate. So there are many other places to source products other than the US and China, and I'm going to be talking that in part 2. So head on over there. If you can, please do one thing for me, leave a comment or feedback, say hello. I'd really appreciate if you'd like to hear more or less of what I'm talking about. Talk to you soon.